when I got wounded? Well, I think I told you we had 3 battalions down there. Well, the 3rd of the 47th was on the Benoit, and they were going up pretty much the same river we were, and it was just a big tributary off of the Macon, and they went on farther down, and we pulled in and kind of set up, and because there was a North Vietnamese activity, they knew. Well, we didn't really see it nothing because we was on one side of the river. Well, the 3rd of the 47th was going up farther Rip River. Well, there were supposed to be forward observers there to throw a smoke grenade. Well, it was supposed to be a green smoke grenade, and it was okay for them to pull the gunboats in and things. Well, somehow Charlie had found out what color, and they threw a smoke grenade. They either guessed the right color, because these guys were supposed to go 2 clicks farther up, and they pulled in, and Charlie had 2 51 calibers sitting there, and they sunk 2 of the gunboats, sunk 1 of the troop carriers. There was 25 Army guys killed. There was 10 Navy guys killed, and probably another 30 or 40 wounded. You know, before they finally got hands on it and got it settled down. Well, by then it was getting evening, so we bedded down. Well, the next day we got up back on troop carriers, and we went up and pulled in where they were. And well, we did. I take that back. I got to go backtrack, because when they was getting that, that's when we walked in and we had some resistance, and that's when I got my Bronze Star. And then we bedded down for the night, and then they picked us up and they took us back across the river. And we had, of course, we had 4 squads in our company. Well, squad 4, I guess. There was an L-shaped ambush, and we walked right into it. And there were snipers in trees. The guy that shot me was chained in a tree and doped up, just like a kamikaze pilot. He was doped up to be and there was several of them. They were chained up in trees. I mean, they knew he was going to die, but they was given all the ammo they could shoot. In fact, I was just telling my wife the other day about one of them, one of our guys, Bill Small. I'm kind of reverting back, if you don't mind. He'd been in base camp, but we were so short because he'd stepped on a bungee pit stick and had gut infection, and he was just getting over that. Well, we was getting so short-handed out in the field, they brought him back out in the field, and he'd only been back out with us maybe 5 days. Well, 2 of them snipers got him in between them, and he had over 100 bullet holes in him. Norman Small. And anyway, these guys got hit hard. Well, I was all the way over here in Squad 1, and we was on the other side of a dike in kind of a ravine, and we was kind of pinned down. Well, I crawled up underneath a log, and I took about a 3-hour nap. And finally, they came and woke me up and said, well, we got to go help Squad 3 and 4. Well, I put my M60 up on my shoulder, and there was the point man, and then lieutenant, and then me. We walked up over this dike, and that's when I got hit. He wasn't aiming here. He was aiming here, but he hit me here, went down, went in right above the collarbone, went in, hit my shoulder blade and shattered it. And then part of the bullet came out, and part of the bullet was still in there. And then 7 years later, it decided it wanted to come out. Well, the sensation is like somebody hit me with a baseball bat as hard as they could. I mean, the impact, and all I said that I remember was, I'm hit. And it knocked me back, like say the impact. And instead of pulling me back where I was safe and dry, they pulled me forward down into the water where I was pinned down. And like, I don't know if you visualize, like here, it'd be easier for me to try to, like, here was a long dike, and then like here was a stream, and then here was the enemy back here, and there was kind of a little dike there. Well, there was a big ravine back here. That's where we just came from. We went up over this dike, and that's when I got wounded. Well, they pulled me down here. Well, the only problem was the ledge down there wasn't as high as what was back here. And these guys, all our guys, my squad, was all bent down like this, you know, because they was shooting at them. Well, since I had that hole, there was a guy named Timothy Chumley from St. Louis. I laid on my left side with my head on his boot, the back of his heel boot, to keep my head out of water. But my shoulder was still that far above the ground, and bullets were ricocheting. And that's when I kind of prayed a little bit. I didn't want to get hit again. And I laid in that water for about 4 hours. And then the tide started coming in, and the water started coming up. And I told Tim, I said, Tim, I said, I got to get out of here. I said, blow a smoke grenade right here in front of us. And I said, I'm going back up over the dike. And he blew a violet smoke grenade, purple or violet. And I made a dash for it. Of course, I couldn't use this arm. It was just, I hadn't taken any pain medicine at all because it was just numb from the impact. I mean, I wasn't having no pain at all. But I didn't know if this bone was broke, so I didn't put no weight on it. And I started crawling back. Well, I was going up over the dike. Well, my sergeant had been shot right in the shoulder. And he didn't realize it. And he said, I'm coming with you, Dave. And he put weight on that arm, and he broke his arm. And I reached back, and I realized I could use my arm. And I crawled up over that dike, and I pulled him with me. You know, and he was crawling with one arm. And we finally made it back to the dry area. And then there was no place for medevac. Of course, we were still pinned down, and they waited till dark. And they, this is a funny story. They had all of us lined up, kind of in a deep ravine where we wouldn't get wounded again. And this part ain't funny. A kid named Tim Brown from Chicago. He was a gymnast. He was wanting to go to the Olympics. And he got shot right through the helmet, and it just cut a gouge from there all the way to his ear. You could almost put your hand in there. And he was still alive, but he was just kind of out of it and kind of singing, and they'd given him morphine and stuff. And he was laying there beside me. Well, I didn't take morphine. I took, I don't know if anybody that ever told you about these Darvon. There was a 33 and a 66, they called them. And the 33, I think, was the potent one. It was like a capsule, but if you took it apart, there was a little pill in there that was pure narcotic, you know. Well, I took about 6 of the Darvon, just, you know, pain. And because the pain was coming, because the numbness was going off. But anyway, they had to wait till dark, and we was in a kind of there was a grove of palm trees. So they started wrapping C4 around them and blowing these palm trees down and pulling them out of the way so they could bring the choppers in. Well, it was kind of fun. We had a forward observer with us for artillery, a captain, and there was a corporal. I got a picture of the corporal. It was Carpenter. Well, Carpenter laid over on top of me because they was getting ready to blow a tree about from here to that fence. Well, he laid over top of me. Well, this captain laid over top of Tim Brown. Well, they blew that tree. Well, Carp was all right. That captain got a splinter in his butt about that big. He had to get medevaced out with the rest of us when they finally got the choppers in. That was funny. Yeah, I just remember that the other night. I started laughing more. I said, what are you laughing at? And I told her about it. Yeah. So anyway, when I finally got medevaced back, we medevaced us back to the troop ship. We landed up on the chopper deck, and first thing they did, they turned the fire hoses on us and started washing us down, because I did have a bandage on this, you know, and I wasn't bleeding, and they would just strip our clothes off, and they just kind of hosed us off, and I walked down to the infirmary on this Navy ship, you know, and this was like midnight, and then about 3:30 in the morning, they woke me up and I walked into the operating room. And they operated on it, and they took a chunk of meat that wide, about that deep, just all the way out, because I'd had bone chips and I'd laid in water and all that, and tried to clean it out as best they could. About 3 days down in there, and they was going to send me up to the 3rd Field Hospital up in Saigon. So I gathered up all my personal stuff and had a black satchel, just my personal stuff, and wearing hospital, pajamas. And I went up to the 3rd Field Hospital, and that bandage, I was up there maybe 3 days, and I was probably about, that bandage had been on there probably about 5 days total, and it was starting to stink a little bit. And his name was Sergeant Robinson. He was Air Force there in Kansas, in 3rd Field Hospital. And I asked him, I said, "Sarge, can you change this bandage?" He said, "Why?" I said, "That's original bandage, been on there 5 days." "Oh yeah, we can." So he pulled it all off. He said, "You want to see that?" I said, "Yeah." So he got me a mirror and I was looking at it. I said, "Okay." So he bandaged me up, Well, then they took me back in and cleaned it out some more. They cleaned out some more bone chips that was right pretty close to the surface. And then they flew me from there. Since it was an open wound, you couldn't stay in country. I mean, just like if we had one guy that broke his leg and the bone came through, they shipped him right to Japan. They didn't want no open wounds there. So they shipped me to Japan, Camp Zama. They went in, I don't know, I was there probably 2 days, and they went in and they closed it up. They pulled it. I had 10 wire staples, or sutures, and they put drains in it. Well, that was fine. And then they sent me down. I started taking therapy because they thought it was just going to be fine. They was going to send me back to Vietnam. Well, after 3 days, them drains plugged up. And one morning, the same major I told you about helped my feet, she walked by and said, "Soldier, you need to get up." I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I don't feel good." She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm running a fever." So she helped me sit up in bed. She grabbed this arm, and I fell right back down. Well, it happened to be the day, I think it was like a Wednesday, all the doctors and interns made around, because we was in a ward, just a big ward. It was all open. And there was 5 or 6 doctors come up around. Well, before that, they came up and took blood because they thought I had malaria, because they took my temperature. I had 105 temperature. Well, I was full of infection. And so they come up and took blood. Half hour later, they came up and took some more blood. Well, right after that, the doctors came around. Well, all the beds had traction rods above them. Well, they set me up in bed, and I was grabbing this traction rod, and there was a young lieutenant intern standing here beside me, and they cut all them wire staples out and they pulled them all out. Well, that relieved some of the pressure. Well, then they took a pair of scissors and stuck in the bottom and opened it up, made a hole about that big, and drained over a pint of fluid out of it. And that young lieutenant sitting there, he says, "I thought you was going to break that rod." He said, "You were squeezing that so hard." I said, "That hurt." But anyway, that's when they came around and they said, "Where you want to go in the States?" Because it was going to be open from then on. They started taking a sulfur gauze, the little brown bottles, and they'd take it and start packing it. And they would pack it all the way from down there all the way up to here. Just pack. And they'd put 2 of them in there and put a bandage on it, just that hole. And it was open from then. And the last operation I had in the service was on my mom's birthday, August 6th of '68. They went in. I went over to Danville, and I spent about 3 weeks there. Well, it took them about 2 weeks because I was there over Easter. This is '75. My whole back swelled up, and they finally got the swelling down to a certain size. In fact, it got funny. I had a Dr. Kim, a Korean doctor over there. And once it started shrinking down, he'd come in every morning and he'd start pushing on it. I say right there. I could feel it. So he'd take an ink pen and he'd put an X. After he left, I'd get up and I'd go take a shower. He'd come in the next day. 'Cause I was there over Easter. Where's the X? I said, I took a shower. So he done it. We done that 3 days in a row. Fourth day he come in there and he says, not even going to look. You come with me. I said, where are we going? He said, oh, we're going to X-ray. I said, okay. So we went down to X-ray and he laid me on a table and he started pushing. I said, right there. He took a needle that long, stuck it in there and he hit it. And I about come off that table. I told him, you hit it. He said, good. So he took another one, went this way, and hit it again. That piece of metal. Because it was probably that deep. And then I went in, they took x-rays, so they knew exactly where it was. I mean, they pinpointed with x-rays. So then, we go back down, out, I lay on the table. Well, he pulled this one out. He put his finger down, and he pulled this one out, and he scratched an X on my back, and he says, now you know, Warshoff. Yeah. But when he operated, I still had a pus pocket. I will get it. I still had a pus pocket the size of my fist. It must have been some kind of junk carbine I got wounded with. Because the bullet, I don't know what kind of bullet it was. Like I say, I had a hole where it had come out, probably about the size of a dime. I just had one up here and then one down there. But then when they operated, they took that out. And that, feel that corner on them. That's what was ripping its way out of my back.
Wow.
And it was ripping its way out.
Man.
That year I started bowling.
Right there.
That year I started bowling.
Uh-huh.
And I got a different job at Borg Warner and I was lifting heavy baskets. And that, between that and the bowling, it broke it loose. That's when it decided to come out. And luckily, of course, all my family, you know, I was single and my family all lived down Tenneville or Kincaid. I had a 1973 Buick with bucket seats, and I drove over to Danville, sitting there like this with my back in between the bucket seats because my whole back was swelled up. I drove myself over to Danville and walked in, and they admitted me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So still left in there. Wow, that's.
Plus, I still got another little piece. A little bit smaller than that. It's in there.
Still in your back.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows up on X-rays. That's that's another funny thing. After of course, after I come back and it shattered my shoulder blade. And of course, your shoulder blade is just like a cartilage. Part of it grew back, but I still got an indentation. Mm-hmm. But I got bone chips that just scattered all through. You know, just naturally they worked their way through. And first time I got an X-ray, it must have been, I come back and I went back to work at Borg Warner. It must have been about 1973. I had a chest X-ray, and the doctor looked at it and he goes, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Them bone chips." Bone chips, I explained to him. Oh, so anymore, after that I said, don't get alarmed. I said, it looks like both my, my whole lungs are just full of little, and after 47 years, they're kind of dissolving or something because there's less of them, or they show up less. But I'm proud of the fact that I was in Vietnam. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a veteran. You can tell it in the hats I wear. The clothes I wear. I'm proud of it. And the older I get, the more I think about it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think about it. There's never been a day since I got wounded that I haven't thought about Vietnam. Of course, when you got a scar on your shoulder like I do and you take your shirt off, it reminds you of it every day.